when you look at disparities amongst, for let's say, Eastern Europeans and Western Europeans, which is something very interesting, and I think you guys will be delighted to hear about. I mean, this is extremely interesting, and I wrote it on my status a couple of days ago, if I'm not mistaken. But I also posted it on my Instagram. You guys should follow my Instagram. And so, okay, I acknowledge that white people earn twice as much as black people. Fine, I acknowledge it. But what I did acknowledge as well is that the gap, the income gap between Western Europeans and Eastern Europeans is 5 times larger than the income gap between blacks and whites. Not just in South Africa, in the US. In fact, in the US, when you compare it to Western and Eastern Europe, I mean, it's far worse. It's far larger. The gap is far larger. In fact, when you look at the numbers, right, I think the average African American in the United States earns about $30,000 per annum, and the average white American in the United States earns about 57,000. So let's round it off to 60,000. You see, so 2 times the white person, the average white person earns twice the average of a black person. So the black person earns 30,000 a year in America, the average black person. So, but if you look at Eastern Europeans, the average Eastern European earns only $9,000 per annum. Imagine that, $9,000 per annum, which is to say it's safe to assume that Eastern Europeans have a worse income than black Americans or African Americans, to be more specific, right? So this kind of doesn't make sense when you think about it. The income gap amongst the same race, because Western and Eastern Europeans, I mean, it's maybe different ethnicities, but same race. I mean, they all white, right? Maybe some of them are not white, but they all white, right? It's Europe, right? Europe, white, European. So if an income gap is so large amongst people of the same race, can you now say that Western Europe is racist against Eastern Europe? What's the excuse now?